Hello everyone, and welcome to this video, which is in our Great Engine Game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and we are taking a look at a fantastic game between Stockfish and SlowChess Blitz at the TCEC Season 25 Division P. I mean, actually, both games of this pair were quite outstanding. The SlowChess Blitz Stockfish game, the reverse, we'll probably have a little look at in a subsequent video, because that was quite amazing as well. But this game really appealed to me. As you can see, pretty sharp Sicilian, so let's have a look how this came about. What did Jeroen cook up for us in the TCC book? Well, e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4, takes, knight f6, knight c3, a6. So a knight off Sicilian, and then a Scheveningen system, and well, bishop e3, bishop e7, and g4. G4, yeah, seen a lot in the Scheveningen at various times. In the pure Scheveningen, 6g4, the careless attack, scored very well for white. I think if you gave the engines the choice, they wouldn't have played castle kingside in this position. Yeah, d5 is really what Dragon and Stockfish want, just striking back in the centre. It's not completely easy for black. I mean, these moves like bishop f3, hitting the pawn on b7, white's better developed, but well, this pawn on g4 is a bit of a weakness as well. In principle, the engines were managing to hold everything together. But after castles, it's a little bit scary. g5, knight fd7, f4, and well, you know, when I grew up in the well, as a chess player anyway, in the 80s, you know, Karpov and Kasparov were playing all sorts of games like this. Kasparov, you know, loved the Scheveningen system, loved having the pawns rolling onto him and then counter-punching. But, well, I mean, in the engine era, basically, you know, this is just really strong for white. You know, as soon as white gets in g5, basically, and particularly when black's king is castled there, then black's already in big trouble. So, well, the game Slow Chess against Stockfish continued knight c5, so we'll have a look at that continuation just a little bit later, or rather in a later video. But Slow Chess Blitz played b5, which is also very natural. So the idea is to play a quick b4, disrupt this knight on c3 and weaken the defense of e4. So a3 played by Stockfish. Always felt to me, you know, whenever I played b5 and white played a3, that always felt like an achievement for me as a Najdorf player, because it felt like, you know, b5, I've grabbed space, and all that white's done is meekly defend. But well, obviously it depends a little bit what you can do afterwards, and it's not so easy for black to put pressure on the white position. So bishop b7 played, rook g1, knight c6, and then f5. I mean, it's always a little question about, you know, do you go rook g1, or do you go a move like h4? I mean, if you play h4, defends the g-pawn with a pawn. You can also go something like h5 and g6. You know, there's also some extra possibilities involved. The nice thing about rook g1, it gets the rook off the long diagonal. There's possibilities of going rook g3 to h3, so rook along the third, just like we discussed in the Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, which could combine with a queen on h5, could be very dangerous. And also, yeah, by taking the rook off that diagonal, it gives you the possibility to play f5. And well, after e takes f5, you can play e takes f5 because your rook isn't hanging. And actually, having the rook on g1, it means that after f5, there's a real threat of f6, because after g takes f6 is discovered. Check, and then we're going to win a piece. So yeah, rook g1, a lot of ideas, and in general in this position, when I let Leela and Stockfish analyse on Chessify, then certainly for Leela, that's much faster than any local machine that I've got, then yeah, they were all preferring rook g1 in actual fact. So knight c6 and now f5. And now Slow Chess decided that it was time to strike back. And as a Najdorf player, I thoroughly approve of what he did. But only, yeah, that's the problem there. When human players thoroughly approve of what an engine does, normally means that it's not a good thing to do. Yeah, I mean, Stockfish and Leela and Dragon actually all wanted to play king h8. Just keep the position as it is. Deal with that threat of f6 by getting the king off the g-file, and then yeah, we're going to see what we do. It was quite difficult, to be honest, for black. It wasn't a great position. I mean, queen d2, knight ce5, bishop f2 was what Stockfish wanted to do, just getting out of knight c4 ideas and also giving the queen some possibilities of swinging over there. And then this is what Stockfish wanted: e takes f5, e takes f5, rook c8, h4, d5. But I mean, this is really, I mean, you're threatening ideas like b4 and then knight c5 to e4 and stuff like that, but it's very, very difficult for black. I mean, f6 takes castles looks absolutely horrifying to me. But Stockfish was neutralizing it with rook g8 and queen e7, then swapping off rooks. Yeah, only Stockfish can hold this, I think, is pretty much the conclusion. What SlowChess Blitz did was very typical Najdorf. He just took on d4 and went d5. And the idea is we're going to sacrifice a pawn maybe, open up the centre, get some counterplay before white's castled. Seems pretty sensible. Stockfish took on e6, and then SlowChess came up with this counter move bishop c5, hitting the queen on d4 and the bishop on e3 behind it. You could take on f7 with check and win a pawn, but, well, that just activates the rook on the f-file, and Stockfish actually isn't interested in that at all. Stockfish is already eyeing just a very good kind of endgame position, a position where black's going to end up with an isolated queen's pawn and a bad bishop behind it. Yeah, I mean, these are always very difficult things for human players to judge. I mean, you see possibilities of taking a pawn and you sort of think, well, should I do that? Or, how big is the positional advantage if I don't do that? And, Stockfish just looks at that positional advantage and says something ridiculous like plus 2.6 or something. But, yeah, whereas as a human player, you'd say, oh, maybe a slight advantage. That's really where, yeah, where engines are so much better, just so much better at making clear assessments of forward positions. For humans, yeah, those assessments are always surrounded by a lot of uncertainty. Queen d2 played by Stockfish, and now this nice move from SlowChess Blitz, queen b6. So looks very strong actually. I mean, you're threatening bishop takes e3. You've also got the idea of playing d4 here as well. But now something outstanding from Stockfish. Took on c5, knight c5. And now a quite amazing move. To spot this one from any sort of distance and even on the move itself would be quite tricky. It's just hard to get your head around why this should be a good idea, basically. But Stockfish played the move rook f1. So, I mean, I was kind of expecting, just castle queenside. That seems like the most natural move, right? I mean, everything's hanging, we castle queenside. But, the engines just thought knight takes c4, takes, ef7. We take back with the rook, and this is perfectly decent, really. I mean, maybe a move like rook f1. We play e3, queen b4, queen e6, takes queen f7. We bring the rook into e8. Nothing much wrong with that, really. Black seems to be perfectly well developed. I just find it hard to kind of understand then why rook f1 works so well, but. The key point is that, if you go knight e4 now, after rook f1, I just take off, and then I take on f7. And after rook f7, king f7. Well, we've got a similar sort of position, only the king's been brought into the centre, and now we castle queenside. And, well, perhaps the even more shocking thing, black plays king g8. I mean, okay, you've got to get your king safe because we're threatening all sorts of horrific things there. And then Stockfish says queen d4, swapping off queens. You can understand why. And then he says plus 2.6 for white. I do understand that this is better for white. If I was black in this position, I'd be, thinking, oh, yeah, tricky ending. Got to try and find something really precise, concrete to keep my position to slightly worse. But then, Stockfish is just saying, yeah, clear win. King on e3. We're going to play c4, we're going to play the rook to d7, and all these endgame advantages are just a clear win. And again, it's something that I understand. I understand where all these advantages, but I just find it hard to believe that this should be, just a clear win for white, basically. But of course, you let Stockfish play this out against Dragon or whatever, and it's just a win all the time. So, but this knight takes c4, the fact that you've put the rook on f1, pressuring f7, that means that this knight takes c4 line is not half as good as it was against castle queenside. But what else does black have? I mean, if you take on e6, like with the knight, I take on d5. If you take with a queen, I'm going to take on d5. I thought actually that maybe d4 would be dangerous, queen d4, rook d8. But Stockfish just said knight d5, takes, e takes d5, and then this move b4. And you're just, pinning the knight to the queen. Obviously, if you go take on a4, I'm just going to take on b6 and take on e6. I've got two extra pawns. And if I take and go rook d5, then this intermezzo b takes c5 is going to be fine. I mean, black will have some checks, but at the end of the day, white's just a piece up. So really, really quite amazing. So, what SlowChess did was go f takes c6, and now e takes d5 from Stockfish. And, what Stockfish is doing there, Stockfish is just nailing that positional advantage that it has eyed from a long way, forcing that black pawn to d5, and then afterwards, only then castling queenside, making everything safe, and then you've just got your positional advantage. The amazing thing somehow is that, black isn't able to somehow exploit this. But these pieces, they look active, but they're nowhere close to the white king. So rook takes f1 played, bishop takes f1. Now what I had sort of thought about was, well, could you, I mean, SlowChess Blitz played e takes d5 and then castles, and then, well, you can see that white's position is better here. A weak pawn on d5, bishop on b7 behind it. We can do some nice blockade. We can move the queenside pawns up. We can line up against the pawn. It's clear this is a very nice ending. It's to be honest, it comes from a Sicilian, but it's also a typically poor Sicilian French ending for black. I mean, I was wondering whether could we do something like b4 here, takes queen takes, get some counterplay going. But there's no hope. I mean, dragon, just like castles, knight a4 and queen d4. And again, plus 2.78 from dragon. If I was playing this as black, I'd be thinking, I'm sure just some good accuracy here, and I can maybe keep my disadvantage to a minimum. But it's lost. It's just lost, at the engine level. Just the queenside pawns roll, the king comes in, weak pawns, control of the d-file. It is all too much. You don't have moves to do it. And Stockfish even just says, d takes c6, who cares? My king's in the center, my b2 pawn is hanging, I'm just going to take this pawn and win. And I mean, the game just keeps getting crazier, really, because black stops white from castling kingside, but Stockfish doesn't care. Rook e8, we go bishop c6. It looks like rook e6 would be terminal, but then bishop d5 would pin the rook, so that wins. And I mean, there's queen h4 checks as well at all various times, but Stockfish just doesn't care. And after rook e7, bishop d5, king h8, king d2, it's all good. Knight e6, rook a4, queen d6, queen g3, and king c1, and everything's safe. White's a pawn up, this one's hanging as well, and black's got no attack whatsoever. I mean, that's just that's just beyond anything a human player could do. I think we'd go happily for dragon's slight clear advantage there. But SlowChess Bliss took on the d5 castles, and the whole game has kind of resolved to a position that's just really, really nice for white. I mean, I'd love this with white, right? If I could get this, it's just somehow the whole way that it happened, white's king seemed to be hanging in the center forever, and SlowChess just understands, and Stockfish rather just understands that there's no problem. The king's always going to get to safety. But how Stockfish went about converting this was absolutely beautiful. h4 played by Stockfish. From time to time it played dragon's favourite move, which was bishop h3. The idea is if knight e6, just want to go takes and then h4 here. And you've just gone for a similar sort of position, but you've swapped off the light square bishop for the knight and left black with this bad bishop against a good knight. Dragon was drawing some, winning some against Stockfish. It's maybe not totally clear, but it is, it just looks just like a very nice position. Most likely white's going to play a move like a4, and after takes, bring a knight into c5, just keep on crushing somehow. Stockfish just played h4, maybe looking for bishop h3 later, but just have the pawn already nicely on h4 there. And after knight e6, queen a7. Always very unpleasant, these moves, these invasion moves, and you have to decide what to do with the bishop. It's got to stay defending the pawn, but you obviously need to protect the a6 pawn as well. So SlowChess played bishop a8, and then bishop g2 and king h8. And what amazed me, stroke impressed me, was that this pawn on d5 and the ensuing moves is going to be hanging, for lots of times, and but Stockfish just isn't interested in taking it, because if you take it, you just expose yourself to pins and all that. And it moves like Queen G3, and all of a sudden White's got to try and work out, what am I doing with my pieces? How am I defending my pawns? All really nasty. But what Stockfish does, he just leaves the pin this way, this way, and just puts the pieces to safety. King B1. It's very instructive. I mean, again, I always find it's always sort of thing that costs me a lot of time. Before I can finally say no, I shouldn't take this pawn, I can keep control. I've just spent about 20 minutes, just agonizing with myself, thinking, by not taking this pawn, am I missing a chance? I mean, that's always the thing. B4 played, takes and queen takes. And now this is where this is actually what made me really love the game. Actually, the more I looked at it, the more I liked other parts. But I was wondering how to finish this off. And a move like bishop d5, looked a little bit risky somehow. And it is. I mean, takes. We go queen h4. Well, queen e7 forks these two, but queen e4 just sort of keeps everything together here somehow. And at some stage we'll be able to play rook c8 and hit the pawn on c2. So, none of those things seem clean. But the delicate way that Stockfish plays now is absolutely beautiful. First thing is this move bishop h3, just completely unexpected, but hitting this knight on e6 and disrupting the black position. This knight is very nicely placed on e6, defends d8. Can spring into all sorts of different places. Well, now you're hitting it away, and when that knight moves, this rook on d8 will be hanging. So the knight came to c5, and then a move that I would never in 100 years see, I think. This move bishop f1, and I was sort of thinking, what, bishop h3 and now bishop f1? What on earth is the idea? The incredible idea is its prophylaxis against rook b8, which looks pretty strong. We're attacking b2. If you go b3, I've got knight takes b3, so what on earth are you going to do? Well, the idea is this move knight b5. Absolutely incredible. If you go rook b5, I just take on here, and followed by queen takes a8. That's why you play queen a7, force that bishop onto the back rank. And you're also cutting the communication between the queen and the rook, so queen b8 is the threat. So rook e8 played, and now knight d4. So amazing! You've managed to move this knight into the blockade of d4, and this rook now, which was nicely protected by a knight on e6, is now a little bit loose. It can easily be attacked by the white queen, which is going to make some problems. And obviously, by moving this knight away from e6, which you did with this move bishop h3, you've managed to get this knight onto d4. Well, knight e4 was what SlowChess Blitz played, just to threaten knight c3. And now this lovely move, knight b3. And what's the idea? Well, a6 is hanging in various ways. And the other idea is that we're just going to play queen d4. And this is what Stockfish is going for all the time. I mean, we've seen a couple of big evaluations for endings already. And, well, the evaluation's not getting any smaller. The further we go along, the more and more keen Stockfish is to exchange off the queens. And, of course, this move, queen d4, exerts brilliant control over the position, and if you're in an ending, a rook on d4 will protect everything beautifully, and then we've got this loose a pawn to attack. The other nice thing about the queen is that you might have thought, oh, could I go play a move like knight f2 and harass this rook? But yeah, the queen's protecting it all the way along this diagonal. So knight g3 was played. Queen d7. I love these intermezzos. They're just, every time Stockfish does this, it's just knocking the black pieces to just a slightly worse position, which means that any activity that the Stockfish wanted doesn't quite work. So rook g8, fairly miserable position for the rook, and then bishop h3, and we're coming into e6 now. So if queen h4, I just go bishop e6, rook b8, rook c7, rook f8, and then this move knight c5. We're just threatening knight d7, actually hitting the rook on f8, which is going to be very, very difficult to deal with. We've also got stuff like queen e7 and then knight a6 when the rook goes to b8. And if you go queen g5, I just go rook g1, and I'm pinning this knight to the rook. These are just incredibly difficult things to see. There's too many tactics taking place, too many lines of attack really. That is really very difficult to see. I mean, it's not difficult. I mean, you could do it intuitively, maybe. Just say, these, this is really, really dangerous for black. So, I'm sure I'll find a way here. But then finding the way once you're there, pretty tricky. Queen b8 was played by Slow Chess Blitz. I mean, basically trying to re-establish control over the back rank, give the rook some extra squares, also defending the knight on g3. Queen a4 now. Unexpected move there from Stockfish, but actually just defending stuff and also just attacking the pawn on a6. Queen b6, and now queen d4. This is what Stockfish wants. And well, actually both Dragon and Stockfish were very keen not to exchange off queens, but you know, queen b5 was what they were looking at, and then this lovely move bishop c6, and after bishop c6 we go h5. Another angle of attack. You know, we've consolidated, we've blockaded that d pawn. This is weak, the queen's offside. We put the rook onto g8, and now what we're doing, we're just coming into the king side. And well, amazingly enough, this was the very visual position that Stockfish against Dragon was ending up in my engine games. Actually, the funny thing is that Dragon finds its defense, takes. And we go knight c6 and rook d5. And, you know, I'm looking at this position and thinking, oh, God, have I messed this up as white? And Stockfish is saying plus 4.02, completely winning. Yeah, it just sees clearly that you can't hold the a6 pawn. Again, it's that, you know, these are the lines that are very difficult. You might suspect as white that you're probably just winning that. But, you know, from afar being sure, or am I missing some stupid defense that enables black to avoid losing the pawn and just reach some sort of drawn position? You know, that's always difficult to see. But for Stockfish, of course, no doubt. But I thought this was a gorgeous position. Look at that one. Oh. So queen takes d4, rook takes d4. The best move. This rook defending the pawn can go over here, and knight c5 is free to attack the pawn now. g6, knight c5, rook e8, and bishop d7. Rook d8, rook b4, and yeah, I mean, it's just very difficult for black to get this king active. Obviously, king g7 allows knight e6. So king g8 played, bishop h3, and we're threatening stuff like knight e6, for example, or even knight d7 round to f6, which could be very awkward. So d4 was played just to give this bishop some activity, but now Stockfish picks up the first pawn and goes knight d4. Rook d8 and b3, knight e4 and knight e6. And yeah, it's just very, very difficult for black to do it. I mean, yeah, if you stay on the back rank, you've got no activity whatsoever. If you try and get some activity, then this rook and this king is in danger. This bishop and king, rather, is in danger. So a5, rook b6, rook c8, rook a6. Knight c3, king b2, knight d1, king a3. Obviously, if you take, I'll take that one. No problem for me. Knight f2, bishop f1. So actually, this bishop's coming round to c4 now, which is going to be rather painful. Knight g4, and then, well, you could do several things. Bishop b5 was a move that I like quite a lot, followed by c4. That looked like a very nice way to play things from Dragon. Stockfish played c4, bishop e4, rook takes a5, knight e3, bishop h3. And, well, 2 pawns up, we're threatening rook e5, we're threatening rook a7, it's all horrific. Yeah, Slow Chess Blitz sacrificed, and then didn't even take the pawn on c4, and, well, piece and a pawn up. Stockfish won very easily. I just love this game. I mean, I really, you know, there were various moments of it when I was whizzing through. You know, I played through all these games, CCC and TCEC at a very fast pace. You know, and there were things, you know, some things there that really, you know, even at that pace that wowed me. Then you look at it more and more, and you just, you know, just find it incredible. This move, rook f1, was really incredible. You know, just essentially, you know, you're not taking a pawn, you're not securing an extra pawn, you're just forcing black to go into a position with you know, an isolated, you know, queen's pawn like this and a bad bishop on b7. Just tactics to force, you know, a favourable positional outcome. And of course then, yeah, the evaluation that Stockfish was having for that, like +2 or whatever, was incredible. But also, you know, the delicacy of these queenside of these moves in the middle game here were incredible. And this move bishop h3, you know, these little disruptive moves, you know, just to knock the black pieces off their position. And you know, often you analyse some sort of forcing line with the pieces as they are, as they stand, and you're just short somehow. You can't quite make it work, and then you see a move like this, and you say, ah. just knock the pieces off their great position. This knight was covering d4, stopping white from blockading it, and just this maneuver, dealing with the black counterattack, and then securing that brilliant blockading square that blocks this pawn, keeps this bishop behind passive. Really quite amazing. And of course, the technique to finish it off was absolutely beautiful. Stockfish is looking really, really impressive at the TCEC. A little bit less at CCC, funnily enough, but at TCC looking really, really, really good, really strong, and has played some absolutely wonderful games so far. So very much looking forward to the rest of DivP, the DivP playoff, and of course the Sufi. Pray for Leela, everyone, I think. So there we are. Hope you enjoyed that. If you enjoyed it, why not give a like, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, take a look at my new book, Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, full of engine themes like this, and also Reengineering the Chess Classics. If you like engines and you like classic games, then you'll love that book. It really is, I think, some of the best analysis you'll ever see of classic games, with lots of new revelations, and I think lots of games that you maybe won't have seen, some very unusual ones. But otherwise, thanks very much for watching. Thanks for all the comments. Do keep them coming. Lovely when people, interact with the channel. And keep your eyes peeled. Plenty more engine games to come. Thanks for watching.